kid challenges a homeless man to a fight, but never imagined he was a former champion. Brandon Miller was flexing his muscles in front of the gym's giant mirror when his attention was drawn to the street outside. His most loyal clients watched his every move with admiration, and he loved the feeling of power and superiority that his job as a personal trainer gave him. That's when he spotted through the panoramic window a gray-bearded man rummaging through the trash next to the fast food joint. The guy wore a faded gray beanie and clothes that had seen better days. Brandon felt a wave of disgust and arrogance wash over him. "Look at that," Brandon said loudly enough for his clients to hear. "A bum right in front of the best gym in Venice Beach. It's a disgrace." Catherine Johnson, one of his longest-standing clients, glanced out the window and shook her head in disapproval. "It really is sad to see someone in that situation, Brandon. Maybe he's hungry." "Hungry, my foot," Brandon scoffed. "These guys are just lazy. They'd rather live on the streets than work. I've got half a mind to go down there and show him a real man works for his living, not begs for it." The other women in the gym started gathering around, curious about the conversation. Brandon loved being the center of attention and decided to seize the moment. "You know what? That's exactly what I'm going to do." "Don't be ridiculous, Brandon," said Catherine, an elegant woman with well-kept white hair. "What do you plan to do?" "I'm going to challenge him to a fight. Show him what real strength looks like. Bet he won't even stay on his feet after the first punch." The clients tried to talk him out of it, but Brandon had already made up his mind. The chance to impress these wealthy women was too tempting. He strode down the gym stairs with confidence, his chest puffed up with pride and arrogance. The man was still digging through the trash when Brandon approached. Up close, he was taller than he'd seemed from the window, but that didn't intimidate Brandon. After all, he was a personal trainer in peak physical condition. "Hey, you!" Brandon called out aggressively. The man lifted his face. His eyes were dark and deep, lined with wrinkles that spoke of hardship. There was something in his expression that should have warned Brandon, but arrogance blinded him completely. "You talking to me, kid?" "Yeah, you. Aren't you ashamed to be digging through trash right in front of a gym? People here pay good money to train, and they don't want to see this mess." The man straightened up slowly. Even in his loose clothes, it was clear there was muscle beneath the worn fabric. "I'm not bothering anyone, son, just looking for something to eat." "That's exactly my point." Brandon gestured dismissively. "A real man works for his food, doesn't beg or live off scraps." "And what do you suggest I do?" Brandon looked up and saw his clients pressed against the window watching everything. It was the perfect opportunity. "I suggest you prove you're a man. How about a fight right here?" The man was silent for a few seconds, studying Brandon with those piercing eyes. "You sure about this, kid?" "Absolutely, unless you're too much of a coward and too lazy." Then something shifted in the man's expression. A sad smile appeared on his face, but there was also a spark of something deeper in his eyes. "All right, if that's what you want." The man removed his tattered coat and carefully draped it over a nearby trash can. Underneath, he wore a t-shirt that revealed arms still muscular despite his age and circumstances. Brandon took his fighting stance, showing off for the women at the window. He was confident this would be quick and easy. But when the man raised his fists, something extraordinary happened. His entire posture changed completely. The shoulders aligned, the feet found perfect balance, and the arms assumed a guard that seemed sculpted by experience. Brandon felt a chill in his stomach, but it was too late to turn back. The man's first move was a simple jab straight to Brandon's chin. The strike was so precise and fast that the personal trainer didn't even have time to defend himself. The impact sent him crashing to the ground like a rag doll. The women in the gym screamed. Some grabbed their phones to film, others ran to the window for a better look. Brandon tried to get up, dizzy and disoriented. The man extended a hand to help him. "Are you okay, kid?" How did you do that?" Brandon stammered, still on the ground. "Years of training," the man replied simply, putting his jacket back on. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now continuing, Brandon finally managed to stand. But his humiliation was only beginning. Several people on the street had stopped to watch the spectacle, and many were filming with their phones. Within minutes, the videos began circulating on social media. The caption accompanying the footage was brutal. Arrogant personal trainer challenges homeless man and gets knocked out instantly. Brandon walked back into the gym in shock. His clients looked at him with a mix of pity and disapproval. "Brandon, that was awful," Catherine said, shaking her head. "You humiliated that poor man for no reason." "But he's the one who knocked me down," Brandon protested weakly. "And you deserved it," another client shot back. What kind of person attacks someone digging through the trash for food? Brandon's phone wouldn't stop ringing. Friends and acquaintances had seen the videos, which were already going viral. The view count grew exponentially by the minute. Things got worse when Victoria Palmer, the gym owner, arrived. She was a strict businesswoman who wouldn't tolerate behavior that could damage her establishment's reputation. "Brandon, care to explain what happened here?" Brandon tried to downplay it, but the videos spoke for themselves. The gym's image was now tied to humiliation and prejudice. "You're fired," Victoria said bluntly. "I can't have employees who misrepresent our values so badly." "But Victoria, please, no discussion. Collect your things and hand over your key. I don't want to see you here again." Brandon left the gym devastated. In just a few hours, he'd lost his job and become a laughingstock online. The comments under the videos were merciless. This guy thought he'd impressed the ladies and got wrecked. Never judge someone by their appearance. Well-deserved humiliation. That night, Brandon barely slept. His life had changed completely in minutes. The next morning, he woke up with a decision. He needed to find that man and understand what had happened. He returned to the scene of the confrontation, but found no one. He asked local shopkeepers, but no one knew where the man might be. That's when Mrs. Robinson, a woman who'd been selling pastries on the corner for over 30 years, approached him. "You're looking for William, aren't you?" "William, the man you fought yesterday. I saw everything from my stand." "You know him?" "Sure do. He sleeps under the awning of that abandoned building." Mrs. Robinson pointed to an unfinished structure across the street. "But he only shows up at night. During the day, he wanders around." Brandon thanked her and decided to wait. When night fell, he went to the abandoned building and found the man lying on a piece of cardboard, using his jacket as a blanket. "What do you want here, kid?" William asked without getting up. "I wanted to talk." "About yesterday?" "What do you want to talk about?" "You challenged me and I accepted. End of story." Brandon sat on the ground near William. Up close, he could see the man's face more clearly. There was something familiar about his features, but he couldn't place it. "How did you learn to fight like that?" William stayed silent for a long time. When he finally answered, his voice carried decades of sorrow. "That doesn't matter anymore." "It does. I've never seen anything like it. It was like you were..." "Were what?" "A professional fighter." William let out a bitter laugh. "That's what I was, a long time ago." Brandon felt a chill. There was something in William's voice that confirmed his suspicions. "Can you teach me?" "Teach you what?" "To fight. The right way, not to hurt others, but to defend myself, to be better." "Why would I do that?" Brandon didn't know how to answer. The truth was, he didn't have a good reason. He just felt he needed to understand this man who had shattered his arrogance with a single blow. "I don't know," he admitted, "but maybe we can help each other somehow." William finally sat up and looked directly at Brandon. "You lost your job because of me, didn't you?" "Actually, I lost it because of myself. You just showed me who I really was." There was another long silence. William seemed to be weighing his words carefully. "Come back tomorrow morning. If you bring coffee and a roll, maybe we'll talk more." Brandon agreed and stood up to leave. As he was walking away, William called out to him. "Kid? Yeah? What's your name?" "Brandon. Brandon Miller." "Brandon, tomorrow you'll find out who I really am, and maybe you'll understand why I prefer to live like this." On the way home, Brandon couldn't stop thinking about William's words. There were mysteries there he needed to unravel. The next morning, Brandon arrived early at the abandoned building, carrying 2 coffees and some sugar rolls. William was already awake, sitting in the same spot. "You came back," William said, accepting the coffee with trembling hands. "I promised I would." They ate in silence for a few minutes. Brandon noticed William ate slowly, savoring each bite as if it were a rare treat. "When was the last time you had something hot to eat?" Brandon asked. "Yesterday. A lady from the neighborhood always gives me something at the end of the day." "William, you said you'd tell me who you really are." William finished eating and leaned back against the building's wall. His eyes drifted to some distant point, as if reliving old memories. "My full name is William Jackson. 20 years ago I was known as William Iron Fist Jackson." Brandon nearly choked on his coffee. That name was familiar. "You've heard of me, haven't you?" William asked, noticing the boy's reaction. My dad used to talk about a boxer called Iron Fist. Said he was the best the United States ever had." "Your dad had good taste. I was the South American middleweight champion for 5 straight years, won 42 fights, lost only 3. Brandon was in shock. He was talking to a legend of American boxing. "But how did you end up like this?" William's expression changed drastically. The pain in his eyes was almost physical. "That's a story I'd rather forget." "William, please, I need to understand." William took a deep breath and began a story that would forever change Brandon's perspective on life. "I had a family, Sarah, my wife, and 2 kids, Emma and Ethan. Emma was 15, Ethan just 12. Brandon stayed silent, respecting how hard this was for William to say. "In December 2003, I had an important fight in Chicago. It was my chance to become Continental Champion. Sarah didn't want me to travel because it was Christmas Eve, but the purse money was too good." William stopped speaking and closed his eyes. Brandon could see tears forming. "Go on, William." "They were going to spend Christmas at my mother-in-law's house in Woodstock. I told them I'd be back in time for dinner on the 24th. I promised the kids." "And what happened?" "I won the fight. It was one of my best performances. I was euphoric, celebrating with my team. When I finally called home, it was already late on the night of the 24th. William opened his eyes and looked directly at Brandon. The phone rang, but it was a police officer who answered. There'd been an accident on the road, a head-on collision. Sarah was driving. William's voice faltered. Brandon felt a lump in his throat. "They didn't make it." William just shook his head. "If I had stayed home, if I hadn't gone to that damn fight, if I had driven instead of Sarah..." "William, it wasn't your fault." "Yes, it was. I chose boxing over my family. I chose money over being there for the most important moment of the year for them." Brandon was starting to understand the pain this man carried, but the story wasn't over. "After the funeral, I was destroyed. I couldn't train, couldn't even think about fighting again. That's when my manager, Richard Thompson, showed up with an offer." "What kind of offer?" "He said I needed a break but couldn't just stop making money. He offered to manage my fortune while I recovered." "And you agreed?" "I signed every paper he put in front of me. I was in deep depression. I couldn't think straight. I trusted him completely." Brandon could already guess where this was going. 6 months later, when I finally had the courage to check my accounts, I found out Richard had transferred everything overseas. My house, my cars, my investments, all gone. And you couldn't sue him. I tried, but he'd forged my signature on several documents, claimed I'd authorized everything. Since I was emotionally unstable, it wasn't hard for him to convince the authorities I'd done it willingly. That's outrageous. The sports world can be cruel, Brandon. Richard had a lot of connections. I was just a fighter who'd lost his family and was drowning in grief. "But you could have rebuilt your career." William shook his head sadly. "After losing my family and being betrayed by the person I trusted most, I made a promise to myself. I'd never touch another dollar from boxing. It felt like my punishment for choosing the sport over being with Sarah and the kids." Brandon was starting to grasp the complexity of William's situation. This wasn't just poverty, it was self-punishment. "So that's why you live on the streets?" "I tore up all my documents and disappeared from the circuit. I wanted to vanish completely." Living on the streets was my way of paying for what I did to my family. William, that won't bring them back. I know, but it's the only way I've found to live with the guilt. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us newcomers. Now, back to the story. Brandon fell silent, processing everything he'd heard. William's story was far more complex and tragic than he could have imagined. William, have you ever thought that maybe your family wouldn't want to see you suffering like this? I don't want to talk about it, William said abruptly, standing up. Thanks for the coffee and the bread, you've heard my story. Wait, you still haven't taught me anything about fighting. And I won't. I want nothing to do with boxing ever again. Brandon watched William walk away and panicked. William, I lost my job. I have nowhere to go. At least let me help you somehow. William stopped and turned around. Help how? I don't know. I can bring food, talk, anything. Why would you do that? Brandon thought for a moment before answering. Because yesterday you showed me I'm not the person I thought I was. Maybe I can learn something from you. William studied Brandon's face for a long time. All right, but no talking about fighting or boxing. Deal. In the following days, Brandon established a routine. Every morning he brought coffee and food to William. They talked about various subjects but avoided boxing. Brandon discovered William was a cultured and intelligent man. He had been a physical education teacher before dedicating himself completely to boxing. He spoke about literature, history, and philosophy with the same passion he once had for sports. During one of these conversations, Brandon shared his own life. The son of a factory worker and a seamstress, he had grown up dreaming of being rich and famous. Working at the gym was his way of feeling superior to others. My parents always worked hard to give me what they never had, Brandon confessed. I think at some point it went to my head. Arrogance is a poison that kills from within, William said. I used to be arrogant too. Thought I was invincible in the ring and in life. What made you change? Tragedy has that power. It shows us how small and fragile we really are. A week after they began talking regularly, Brandon made a discovery that changed everything. He was walking through the neighborhood when he saw William leaving a small house in the nearby slum. Curious, Brandon followed at a distance. William entered the house carrying a bag of food. Brandon waited hidden until he left, then approached the window. Inside, an elderly woman with white hair lay on a simple bed. She seemed ill. A younger woman, likely her daughter, was by her side. Brandon went home puzzled. The next day, he questioned William about what he'd seen. William, yesterday I saw you going into a house in the slum. Who lives there? William visibly tensed. That's none of your business, Brandon. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to pry. It's just what? You share the food I bring with them, don't you? William lowered his head, confirming Brandon's suspicions. Mrs. Eleanor is sick. Cancer. Her daughter Rachel works as a cleaner but doesn't earn enough for the medicine. Brandon was moved. Here was a man who had nothing but still helped others in worse situations. Why do you do this? Because when you have nothing, you understand others suffering better. From that day on, Brandon began bringing more food, knowing William would share it with Mrs. Eleanor and Rachel. But his admiration for William grew even more when he discovered another secret. During a nighttime walk through the neighborhood, Brandon saw William talking to a group of young men near a school. They seemed to be listening intently. The next day, Brandon asked about them. Just lost boys, William said vaguely. Lost how? Some are mixed up with drugs. Others are just rebellious. I talk to them sometimes. About what? Choices. About how one bad decision can ruin a whole life. Brandon realized William was using his own experience to help those young men. Even living on the streets, he still found ways to make a difference in others' lives. William, have you ever thought of doing something more formal, like working with at-risk youth? For that, I'd need papers, a normal life, and I can't have that. Why not? Because I don't deserve it. Brandon was growing frustrated with William's stubbornness in punishing himself. That's ridiculous, William. You're wasting incredible talent because of a tragedy that wasn't your fault. I don't want to discuss this, but I do. Do you think your family would be happy knowing you threw your life away? William remained silent, but Brandon could see his words had struck a deep chord. Would they want to see you helping other young people avoid making the same mistakes? Stop it, Brandon. Or would they prefer you keep torturing yourself for the rest of your life? William stood abruptly and began walking away. William, wait. Leave me alone, Brandon. You don't understand anything. Brandon was left alone, but knew he had planted a seed of doubt in William's mind. In the following days, William avoided him. When they finally met again, the former champion seemed even more dejected. William, I'm sorry if I offended you the other day. You didn't offend me. You just spoke truths I don't want to hear. And why don't you want to hear them? Because it's easier to live in guilt than to try rebuilding a life. Brandon felt he was finally getting to the heart of the matter. William, are you afraid of being happy again? The question caught William off guard. He stayed silent for a long moment before answering. I'm afraid of disappointing people again, afraid of failing those who might depend on me. But you're already helping people. Mrs. Robinson, Rachel, those young folks, that's different. Small acts. Nothing that could cause real harm if I fail. Brandon began to understand William's problem wasn't just guilt, it was fear. Fear of taking on responsibilities that could lead to new tragedies. William, can I make you a proposal? What kind of proposal? Teach me to fight, not to compete or make money, just to become a better person. I've said I don't want anything to do with boxing. It doesn't have to be official. Just teach me discipline, respect, control, the things you said you learned from the sport. For the first time, William seemed interested. Why is this important to you? Because when you knocked me down that day, I realized I knew nothing about real fighting. All I knew was showmanship. I want to learn the true essence. William was thoughtful for several minutes. If I do this, it won't be official. Nothing that reminds me of my past career. Perfect. Just one man teaching another to be better. And you're sure you won't quit when you see how hard it is? I'm sure. William took a deep breath. Fine. But no gyms, no rings, and no talk about competitions. Where then? I know a place. An empty lot far from here. We can train at dawn when no one's around. Brandon agreed immediately. He'd finally found a way to truly connect with William. The next day at 5 a.m., William took Brandon to an abandoned lot on the outskirts of Venice Beach. The area was surrounded by high walls with weeds growing between the stones. No one will bother us here, William said, removing his jacket. What are we doing first? Before you learn to fight, you learn to fall. Brandon found it odd but trusted William's expertise. For the next 2 hours, William taught him basic balance techniques and how to fall without injury. There was nothing glamorous about it, just repetitive, exhausting drills. This doesn't feel like fighting, Brandon complained after his 10th fall. Because it's not fighting yet, it's preparation. If you don't know how to fall, you'll never truly know how to fight. Brandon began to realize there was far more complexity to what William was teaching than he'd imagined. William, how did you learn all this? From my first trainer, old Joe. He used to say boxing wasn't about hitting your opponent. It was about knowing yourself. And do you believe that? I believe it. Every punch you learn to throw, you also learn to take. Every victory teaches you about your strengths, every defeat about your weaknesses. The training continued every morning. William was a demanding but fair teacher. He never yelled at or humiliated Brandon, but he also wouldn't tolerate laziness or lack of dedication. After 2 weeks, Brandon began noticing changes in himself, not just physically but mentally. He was calmer, more focused, less impulsive. William, how do you stay so composed in any situation? Years of training and years of suffering both teach patience. Do you think I'll ever be like that? That depends on you, Brandon. Outer strength is easy to develop. Inner strength takes a lifetime. During the training, Brandon also learned more about William's life philosophy. The former champion spoke about respect, humility, and responsibility with the same passion he once had for boxing. Every person you meet in life is fighting a battle you know nothing about, William said during a break in their exercises. That's why it's important to treat everyone with respect. Is that why you didn't get mad when I challenged you that day? I was sad. Sad to see a young man with so much potential wasting energy on arrogance. Then why did you agree to fight me? Because sometimes people need to be knocked down to learn how to get back up the right way. Brandon realized that lesson perfectly applied to his own journey. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like the video and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. After a month of training, Brandon had become a completely different person. His arrogance had vanished, replaced by genuine, humble confidence. It was during this time that something unexpected happened. Brandon was walking home after training when he saw a woman being harassed by two men on a dark street. The old Brandon would have probably walked right past, afraid of getting into trouble, but William's teachings about responsibility and protecting the weak echoed in his mind. "Hey, leave her alone," Brandon said, stepping toward the men. "Back off, man. This ain't your business," one of them snapped. "It is my business when I see someone being bullied." The two men turned to Brandon, clearly ready to fight. But something had changed in the way he stood. The posture William had taught him, the balance, the calmness. "You sure you want to get involved?" the second man asked. "I am." Brandon's presence, his calm and determination, seemed to unsettle the aggressors. They muttered a few words and walked away. "Thank you," the woman said, relieved. "That was very brave of you." It wasn't bravery, it was responsibility. The next day, Brandon told William what had happened. "How did you feel?" William asked. "Calm, confident. I knew I could handle it without unnecessary violence. That's the real power training gives you, not the ability to hurt others, but the confidence to protect when needed." Brandon was starting to understand that William wasn't just teaching fighting techniques, he was teaching life lessons. "William, you should be doing this officially, teaching young people the way you've been teaching me." "We've talked about this, Brandon. But it's true. You have a gift for teaching, maybe. But I can't." "Why not?" "Because I haven't forgiven myself for what happened to my family." Brandon realized they'd reached a crucial point. William needed to face his inner demons before he could truly help others on a larger scale. "William, can I tell you something about my family?" "Of course." "My father worked in a factory for 30 years. Every day he left home at 5 in the morning and came back at 7 at night. He did it to give me and my mother a better life." William listened carefully. He never complained, never said he was tired. He just worked because he knew we had needs. One day I asked him if he regretted having such a hard life. "And what did he say?" "He said the real tragedy wasn't working hard for those you love. It was having the ability to help others and not using it." William fell silent, but Brandon could see his words were having an impact. "You have the ability to change lives, William. You're wasting that gift because of guilt you shouldn't carry. It's not that simple." "Yes, it is. You just have to decide if you want to keep living in the past or start building a future." William stood up and began walking across the vacant lot. Brandon followed him. "Brandon, you don't understand. If I take on big responsibilities again and something goes wrong, what if it goes right? What if you can save young people from making mistakes that could ruin their lives? What if I fail again? Then you try again. That's what brave people do." William stopped walking and looked straight at Brandon. "You've changed a lot since we first met. I learned from the best teacher I ever had." "I'm not a good teacher, Brandon. I'm just a broken man trying to make sense of his pain." "That's exactly what makes you a good teacher. You know what it's like to suffer and overcome." That week, something shifted in the dynamic between Brandon and William. The former champion seemed more thoughtful, as if he was really considering Brandon's words. Then something happened that would change the course of their lives. Brandon was heading to morning training when he saw an ambulance parked in front of Mrs. Robinson's house in the neighborhood. He ran to the scene and found Rachel crying at the door. "Rachel, what happened?" "My mother got worse overnight. We had to call an ambulance." "Where are they taking her?" "County Hospital. But I don't know if they'll be able to do anything." Brandon went with Rachel to the hospital and called William, who arrived minutes later. At the hospital, they learned that Mrs. Robinson needed a specific treatment that wasn't available in the public system. The cost was too high for Rachel to afford. How much does the treatment cost? Brandon asked the doctor. About $15,000, but it needs to be done quickly. Brandon looked at William, who was visibly shaken. Rachel, do you have any family who can help? William asked. No, Mr. Jackson, it's just the two of us. Brandon left the hospital with a determination that surprised even himself. He had an idea, but needed to act fast. He went home and gathered all the valuables he owned, his watch, gold chain, gym equipment. He sold everything he could and managed to raise $8,000. He returned to the hospital and found William sitting with Rachel in the waiting room. William, I need to talk to you privately. They stepped aside and Brandon showed him the money. I got $8,000. We still need 7 more, but it's a start. William was stunned. Brandon, you can't do this. This must be everything you have. It is everything I have, but not everything I can get. What do you mean? William, remember my old boss, Victoria? The gym owner who fired you? Yeah, she has a lot of money and always talks about social responsibility. I'm going to talk to her. Brandon, she'll never help you after what happened. Maybe not, but I have to try. Brandon left William at the hospital and went straight to the gym. Victoria was in her office, surprised to see him. Brandon, what are you doing here? Victoria, I need your help. Not for me, but for someone whose life is at risk. Brandon told the whole story of William, Mrs. Eleanor and Rachel. He spoke about his personal transformation and what he had learned over the past few months. That's a very touching story, Brandon. But why do you think I should get involved? Because you've always said the gym has a social responsibility, and because William could do so much more good for the community if given a chance. Victoria was thoughtful for a few minutes. You said this William was a boxing champion. He was. One of the best the United States has ever had. And now he lives on the streets. By choice. He blames himself for a tragedy that wasn't his fault. Victoria stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the street where it all began. Brandon, you've changed a lot since the last time we spoke. I have. William taught me things no gym ever could. Like what? Humility, responsibility, the true meaning of strength. Victoria returned to her chair and picked up her checkbook. I'll pay for Mrs. Eleanor's treatment, but I have one condition. What? I want to meet this William in person, and I want to make him an offer. Brandon returned to the hospital with the check and the news that Victoria wanted to meet William. The former champion was hesitant, but eventually agreed. The meeting took place right there in the hospital, in the room where Mrs. Eleanor was recovering. Victoria arrived dressed simply, without any showiness. Mr. Jackson, Brandon told me your story. I hope he didn't exaggerate, William replied timidly. Actually, I think he was modest. I looked into your career after he came to me. You were truly exceptional. I was, but that was a long time ago. Talent doesn't disappear, Mr. Jackson. It just hides sometimes. Victoria stepped closer to the bed where Mrs. Eleanor slept, sedated. It's beautiful to see how much you care for people who aren't even your family. When you don't have family, all good people become your family. Mr. Jackson, I'd like to make you an offer. William looked at Victoria skeptically. What kind of offer? I want you to work with me, not as a personal trainer, but as the coordinator of a social project. I don't understand. I want to start a boxing program for at-risk youth, not to create champions, but to create better people. William fell silent, processing the offer. Why would you do this? Because after talking to Brandon, I realized my gym could do so much more for the community than just serve wealthy clients. I don't have documents. I don't have a permanent address. We can handle all that. All. But I need to know if you're interested. William looked at Brandon, who smiled encouragingly. Can I think about it? Of course, but don't take too long. There are a lot of young people out there who need a mentor like you. In the days that followed, as Mrs. Eleanor recovered from her treatment, William was visibly torn. Brandon could tell he wanted to accept the offer, but was still wrestling with his fears. William, what's stopping you from saying yes? Fear, Brandon. Fear of failing again. But you're already helping kids informally. What's the difference? The difference is, now it would be official. There'd be expectations, responsibilities. And there'd also be resources to do a much better job. William took a deep breath. Brandon, what if I accept and something goes wrong? What if one of the kids gets hurt during training? What if I can't help them turn their lives around? What if you succeed? What if you change dozens of lives the way you changed mine? You're different. You wanted to change. They all do, William, they just don't know how. That night, William made a decision that would change not only his life, but the lives of many others. He found Brandon in the vacant lot where they used to train. Brandon, I'm going to accept Victoria's offer. Really? That's fantastic. But I have conditions. What are they? First, I want you to be my assistant on the project. Me? But I don't know anything about boxing yet. You understand people, and that's more important. What's the second condition? I want the project to honor my family, Sarah, Emma, and Ethan. I want their names to be remembered for something positive. Brandon felt tears in his eyes. William, they'd be so proud of you. I hope so. The next day, William and Brandon met with Victoria to finalize the project details. The meeting took place at the gym, but this time, William walked in through the front door. Mr. Jackson, I'm so glad you decided to accept, Victoria said, shaking his hand. Thank you for the opportunity, but I want to make it clear, I'm not doing this for the money. I know. That's exactly why I trust you to lead this project. Victoria presented her full proposal. She had set aside a space in the gym exclusively for the social project. There would be proper equipment, assistant trainers, and even psychological support for the young participants. How will we select the participants? Brandon asked. Through partnerships with public schools and community organizations, Victoria explained. We want to reach kids who truly need guidance. And what's the focus of the program? William asked. Discipline, respect, self-esteem, and responsibility. We'll use boxing as a tool, but the goals are much bigger. William was moved to see his vision aligned with Victoria's proposal. When can we start? As soon as you're ready, but first, we need to resolve your legal situation and find you proper housing. Victoria had hired a lawyer to help William recover his documents and establish a new legal identity. She also offered him a modest apartment near the gym. Why are you doing all this for me? William asked. Because people like you are rare, Mr. Jackson, and when we find someone with your character and experience, we should support them. 2 weeks later, William moved into the apartment. It felt strange to be in a home again after years on the streets, but Brandon helped him adjust. How does it feel to sleep in a bed again? Brandon asked. Guilty, William admitted, like I don't deserve this much comfort. William, you need to stop punishing yourself. Your family wouldn't want to see you suffering. How can you be so sure? Because real love always wants the best for the person you love, even after they're gone. William fell silent, but Brandon could see his words were sinking in. On the day of the project's launch, William was nervous. 15 kids between 14 and 18 had signed up to participate. All came from struggling families, and many had already had run-ins with the law. What if they don't respect me? William asked Brandon minutes before the first class. They will, just be yourself. What if I can't teach them? William, you taught me, and I was a lot harder than any of these kids. The teenagers walked in with skeptical looks. Some seemed to be there only because their parents forced them. William introduced himself simply, without mentioning his past career. My name is William. I'm here to teach you about boxing. But first, I want you to understand one thing. We're not here to make fighters. We're here to make better people. One boy named Tyler laughed sarcastically. What kind of talk is that, old man? I came here to learn how to fight, not listen to a lecture. William calmly approached him. What's your name? Tyler. Tyler, do you know how to fight? Yeah, I do. I've beaten plenty of fools on the street. That's good. Then you can teach me a few things too. Tyler was confused by William's response. What do you mean? You can teach me what it's like to live angry all the time, what it's like to wake up every day wanting to hit someone, what it's like to constantly have to prove your strength. Tyler lowered his gaze, clearly uncomfortable. I've lived like that too, Tyler, and I can teach you how to live without that anger, how to have real strength, not just muscles. From that moment on, Tyler and the other kids started paying attention to William differently. "Who here has lost someone important?" William asked. Almost everyone raised their hand. "Who here has ever felt abandoned?" Again, nearly all responded. "Who here has wanted to give up on everything?" Every hand went up. "Then you understand how I feel every day. The difference is you still have time to change your stories." The first lesson was more about talking than boxing. William told his own story, hiding nothing. He spoke about his wins and losses, about losing his family and living on the streets. "Coach, were you really a champion?" asked a girl named Amber. "I was, but it didn't make me a better person. In fact, it made me arrogant and selfish." "And how did you change?" William looked at Brandon, who was watching from the doorway. "I met someone who showed me there was still goodness in me, and you'll meet that person too." Training started gradually. William taught the basics first: stance, balance, breathing. No punches yet. "Coach, when do we learn how to hit?" Tyler asked impatiently. "When you learn to control the anger inside you. Whoever fights with anger always loses." "How so?" "Anger blinds you, Tyler. It makes you reckless. A real fighter keeps a cool head." William applied the same lessons he'd taught Brandon, but tailored to each kid. Amber, for example, was shy and struggled with confidence. "Amber, do you know the most powerful punch in boxing?" he asked one day. "The hook?" "No, it's believing in yourself. When you believe you can, you've already won half the fight." With Tyler, the approach was different. The boy was aggressive and impulsive, so William focused on control and discipline. "Tyler, do you want to be strong or just look strong? What's the difference? Someone who's truly strong doesn't need to prove anything. Someone who just looks strong is always picking fights to convince others." Gradually, William saw changes in the kids. They arrived on time, followed the rules, and started helping each other. Brandon watched with admiration. William had found his true calling. "How do you know exactly what to say to each of them?" Brandon asked after class. "Because I've been all of them, Brandon. The arrogant kid, the insecure one, the angry one. When you've lived it, you see others more clearly." 3 months into the program, something tested William's resolve. Tyler showed up to practice with a bruised face, saying he'd gotten into a fight at school and was suspended. "Why'd you fight, Tyler?" William asked. "Some guy was talking trash about my mom. I couldn't let that slide." "And did hitting him fix anything?" He shut up. "For how long? A week, a month, then what?" Tyler had no answer. "Tyler, when you hit someone out of anger, you're giving them power. You're letting them control your actions. So what should I have done?" "Use the strength you've built here to control yourself. Shown him you're bigger than his words." William realized it wasn't just Tyler struggling. Several other youths were having trouble applying the teachings outside the gym. That's when he made an important decision. "Brandon, we need to do more than just train these kids a few hours a week. What do you have in mind?" "I want to create a mentorship program. Each of them needs individual guidance." "How would that work?" "On weekends, we'll visit them at home, get to know their families, understand their specific struggles." Brandon thought the idea was excellent, but was worried about William. "Are you sure you're ready for so much responsibility?" "I'm scared, Brandon, but I can't let fear stop me from helping these kids." The mentorship program began the following Saturday. William and Brandon first visited Amber's home. The girl lived with her grandmother in a modest house in the neighborhood. Her grandmother, Mrs. Robinson, was a sweet woman who worked as a housekeeper. "Amber talks about you a lot, Professor William," Mrs. Robinson said. "She's become much more confident since she started training." "Mrs. Robinson, Amber is a special girl. She just needs to believe in herself more. The problem is her father never paid her any attention. She grew up thinking she was worthless." William immediately understood the root of Amber's struggle. "May I speak with her privately?" "Of course." William sat beside Amber in the small backyard of the house. "Amber, your grandmother told me about your father." The girl lowered her eyes. "He never liked me. Always said I was too weak." "And you believe that?" "Sometimes." "Amber, do you know what courage is? Not being afraid?" "No. Courage is being afraid and doing the right thing anyway. and you have a lot of courage. How so? You come to train every day even though you're afraid of failing. You keep trying to improve even when someone told you you weren't good enough. That's real courage. Amber smiled for the first time since William had met her. The visit to Tyler's home was more complicated. The boy lived with his mother, Mrs. Robinson, who worked as a cleaner and came home exhausted every day. "Professor, I don't know what to do with Tyler anymore," Mrs. Robinson confessed. "He's always getting into trouble." "Mrs. Robinson, Tyler isn't a bad kid. He's just trying to protect you the only way he knows how." "How do you mean?" "He told me other boys in the neighborhood have harassed you. Tyler thinks he needs to be the man of the house and solve everything with his fists." "It's true. Ever since his father left us, Tyler feels responsible for me." William talked to Tyler about responsibility versus violence. "Tyler, protecting your mother is important, but there are better ways to do it than fighting." "Like what?" "By being a son she can be proud of, studying, working, building a better future for both of you." "But what if someone messes with her again?" "Then you come to me. Real men ask for help when they need it." The home visits completely transformed the project's dynamic. William and Brandon got to know each youth's struggles intimately and could develop tailored solutions. 6 months after the program began, the results were visible. Amber had become one of the top students in her school. Tyler no longer got into fights and had landed a part-time job. Other youths also showed significant progress. Marcus, who had been shy and introverted, had become a leader of a study group at school. Bailey, who had struggled with authority, now helped William train the newcomers. "William, you should be proud of what you've accomplished," Brandon said during one of their training sessions. "I am, but I'm also scared." "Why?" "Because now I know I can make a difference in these kids' lives, and that comes with enormous responsibility." "It's the same responsibility you've always had, William. The difference is that now you're embracing it instead of running away." That week, something happened that once again tested William's determination. One of the youth in the program, Charlie, was arrested for theft. He'd only been with the project for 2 months, and William felt responsible for the failure. "I failed him, Brandon," William said, visibly shaken. "You didn't fail, William. 2 months isn't enough to change a lifetime of problems. But I should have noticed he was planning something." "Charlie never told you about the troubles at home." "How could you have known?" Brandon discovered Charlie had stolen to buy medicine for his sick mother. The boy was desperate and didn't know who to turn to. "William, let's visit him at the police station." "I'm not sure that's a good idea." "It is. He needs to know we don't abandon our students even when they make mistakes." At the station, Charlie cried when he saw William and Brandon. "Professor, I'm so sorry. I didn't want to let you down." "Charlie, we all make mistakes," William said. "What matters is learning from them." "Are you kicking me out of the program?" "No, but we're going to help you solve your problems the right way." William and Brandon spoke with Charlie's mother and learned she needed urgent surgery. Victoria, upon hearing the situation, offered financial help. "Why are you doing this?" Charlie's mother asked. "Because I believe in the work William is doing, and because Charlie is a good boy who made a wrong choice for a noble reason." Charlie's case became a valuable lesson for all the youth in the program. William used the situation to talk about the consequences of choices and the importance of asking for help. "How many of you have ever felt like doing something wrong to solve a problem?" William asked during a group discussion. Everyone raised their hand. The difference between doing it or not lies in who you turn to when you need help. You have family here. You can count on us for anything. A year after the program began, Victoria organized an event to showcase the results to the community. Parents, teachers, and local officials were invited to see the work. "Mr. Jackson, the results have exceeded all expectations," said the principal of one partner school. "The youth in your program show significant improvement in discipline and academic performance." "The credit isn't mine," William replied humbly. "It's theirs. I just showed them they already had everything inside them." During the event, each youth had a chance to speak about their experience. Amber, who used to be too shy to speak publicly, took the stage with confidence. "Professor Jackson taught me that being strong doesn't mean having no fear. It means having the courage to face it. Tyler spoke about emotional control. Before I solved everything with my fists. Now I think before acting, and that's made me stronger than any punch could. The testimonies moved everyone present. Victoria approached William with tears in her eyes. Mr. Jackson, you've transformed not just these young lives, but their entire families. They transformed me, Victoria, showed me there was still purpose in my life. That night, after everyone left, William and Brandon remained alone in the gym. Brandon, remember the day we met? How could I forget? You knocked me out with one punch. That's not what happened. You were the one who lifted me up. What do you mean? When you showed up at that abandoned building with coffee and bread, you proved to me there were still good people in the world, people willing to help without expecting anything in return. Brandon was moved by William's words. William, can I ask you something? Of course. Do you still feel guilty about your family? William remained silent for a long time before answering. I miss them. I always will. But I don't feel guilty anymore. I believe Sarah, Emma, and Ethan would be proud to see how I'm helping these young people. I'm sure they would, Brandon replied. Brandon, I want to thank you for not giving up on me when I was lost. William, you saved my life. I was an arrogant, empty young man. You taught me what really matters. 2 years after the project began, William received an offer that would change the course of his life once again. An international boxing organization had learned about his work and wanted to replicate the model in other countries. Mr. Jackson, we'd like you to coordinate an international social boxing program, explained the organization's representative. Would that mean traveling the world? Yes, teaching other coaches to use your methods. William looked at Brandon, who was smiling proudly. Can I think about it? Of course, but we want you to know your work is inspiring people all over the world. That night, William discussed the offer with Brandon. What do you think I should do? I think you should accept. Imagine how many young people could be helped. But what about our project here? Our students? The project is solid and I can oversee things while you're traveling. Are you sure? Absolutely. You taught me well. William accepted the offer, but with conditions. He would spend 6 months a year traveling and 6 months working on the original project in Los Angeles. 3 years later, the program had expanded to 15 countries. Thousands of young people were benefiting from the methods William had developed. During one of his trips, William received an excited call from Brandon. William, you won't believe it. Amber got accepted to college with a full scholarship. That's wonderful. What's her major? Psychology. She wants to work with at-risk youth. And Tyler. He opened an auto repair shop with the money he saved from working. He's even hiring other kids from the neighborhood. William smiled on the other end of the line. His former students weren't just building their own lives, they were helping others do the same. Brandon, how's Mrs. Robinson doing? Fully recovered. She and Rachel are helping care for the younger kids in the program. And Charlie? He finished high school and wants to study law. Says he wants to help kids who make mistakes like he did. William was moved to hear that all his first students were thriving. When he returned to the United States, William found the project bigger than ever. Victoria had expanded the program to 3 different gyms, and there was a waiting list of kids eager to join. William, we have a surprise for you, Victoria said when he arrived. What surprise? The city wants to officially adopt our project, create a municipal program based on our methods. Does that mean we can help even more kids? Exactly, and you'd be the general coordinator. William accepted immediately. He had finally found his true life's purpose. At the launch ceremony for the municipal program, all the young people who had been part of the project over the years were present. Many were now successful adults in their careers. Amber, now a psychology graduate, volunteered with the program. Tyler had married and had a son. Charlie was in his 2nd year of law school. Professor Jackson, Amber said during the ceremony, you didn't just teach us boxing, you taught us how to fight for our lives. You always knew how to fight, William replied. I just showed you that you were stronger than you thought. That night, William was alone in his apartment when an unexpected visitor arrived. It was Richard Thompson, his former manager who had stolen his money years before. William, I heard about your work. I came here to... To what, Richard? To ask for forgiveness and to return what's yours. Richard held out an envelope with documents. I transferred everything back into accounts in your name. All the money I took, with interest and adjustments. William looked at the envelope without taking it. Why now? Because I found out I have cancer. And I want to die at peace with myself. Richard, you destroyed my life 15 years ago. I know, and I'll carry that guilt forever. But I saw what you did with your life after that, and I realized maybe I set you free to find your true purpose. William took the envelope and placed it on the table without opening it. Richard, I forgive you. Not for you, but for me. I don't want to carry bitterness in my heart anymore. Thank you, William. You were always a better person than I deserved as a client. After Richard left, William called Brandon. Brandon, I need to tell you something. What happened? Richard showed up here. He returned all the money he stole. That's incredible. Are you going to accept it? I will, but not for me. What do you mean? I'm going to use this money to create a foundation to expand our work across the country. William, this will change the lives of thousands of young people. That's exactly what Sarah, Emma, and Ethan would have wanted me to do. The Sarah, Emma, and Ethan Foundation was created 6 months later. With the available resources, William was able to expand the program to every major city in the United States. 5 years after its creation, the foundation was serving over 10,000 young people nationwide. William had become a global reference in education through sports. In an interview for a documentary about his life, William was asked what he had learned on his journey. I learned that life knocks us down many times, but true strength lies in how we get back up and in how we help others rise too. Do you consider yourself a winner? I do. Not because I won fights in the ring, but because I turned my pain into purpose. What advice would you give to young people going through hardships? Never give up on yourselves. Seek help when you need it. And always remember, it's not about how many times you fall, but how many times you get back up. At the end of the documentary, William was filmed training a new group of young people. Among them was Gabriel, a 14-year-old boy who reminded William of himself in his youth. Coach, do you think I can become a champion? Gabriel asked. Gabriel, you already are a champion. You just need to discover at what. What do you mean? Everyone has a special talent. My job is to help you find yours and use it for good. And if I don't find it, you will, I promise. As he watched Gabriel train, William smiled. He saw in that boy the same determination he once had, but he also saw the chance to guide him down a better path. Brandon walked over to William. What are you thinking about? I'm thinking that maybe my real career is just beginning. What do you mean? I spent 15 years fighting in the ring. Now I want to spend the rest of my life fighting for these young people. William, you've already done more for the youth of the United States than any boxing champion ever could. There's still so much work to do, Brandon. Millions of young people need guidance, opportunities, people who believe in them. And you'll be there for all of them? I'll do my best. That's what Sarah, Emma, and Ethan would have done. That night, William returned home and found a letter in the mail. It was from Amber, who now worked on a similar project in Europe. Coach William, I wanted you to know I'm applying your teachings here in England. The refugee youth I work with are responding incredibly well to the methods you developed. You didn't just change our lives, you created a legacy that will transform generations. Thank you for believing in us when we didn't even believe in ourselves. With love, Amber. William folded the letter carefully and placed it in a box where he kept all the letters from former students. There were hundreds by now. Each letter represented a transformed life, a family that had found hope, a young person who had discovered their potential. William looked out the window of his apartment and saw the place where it had all begun years earlier. The dumpster where he'd searched for food, the sidewalk where he'd slept so many nights. Now in that same spot there was a plaque. Here began the Sarah, Emma, and Ethan Foundation, transforming lives through sports. Thank you, William whispered, gazing at the sky. Thank you for not letting me give up completely. Thank you for putting Brandon in my path. and thank you for showing me there was still purpose in my pain." A gentle breeze drifted through the window, and William felt a peace he hadn't known in decades. He had finally found his place in the world. The next day, William woke with renewed energy. He had a meeting with government representatives to discuss expanding the program to public schools across the country. During the meeting, the Secretary of Education made a surprising proposal. "Professor William, we'd like you to oversee a national sports-based education program. Would that include sports other than boxing? Yes, we want to apply your methods to soccer, volleyball, basketball, all sports. That would be a tremendous responsibility, but no one is more prepared for it than you." William accepted the challenge. Within 2 years, the national program was being implemented in every public school in the country. The results were extraordinary. School violence dropped by 60%, academic performance improved significantly, and thousands of young people discovered talents they never knew they had. Brandon, who now coordinated the program's operations, was tasked with training new instructors. "Brandon, do you remember when you asked me to teach you how to fight?" "I do. You said you wanted nothing to do with boxing. Now I realize you didn't want to learn to fight against others. You wanted to learn to fight for others. That's what you taught me, William, that the real fight is for people's lives." 10 years after the start of his journey of transformation, William was honored by the President of the United States for his service to the nation's youth. At the ceremony, hundreds of young people who had gone through his programs were present. Many were now teachers, doctors, engineers, lawyers. "Professor William," said Tyler, now a father of 3 and a successful businessman, "you didn't just save our lives, but the lives of our children and grandchildren." "You saved mine," William replied, moved. "You showed me there was still so much love to give and receive in this world." During his speech at the ceremony, William spoke about the importance of never giving up on people. "We all go through hard times, we all make mistakes, but there's always a second chance, always an opportunity to start over. The young man who challenged me to a fight years ago had no idea he was starting a journey that would change thousands of lives. Sometimes, our greatest encounters begin in unexpected ways." After the ceremony, William and Brandon returned to the gym where it had all started. Victoria, now a close friend, was waiting with a celebration cake. "William, when are you going to retire?" Victoria teased. "Never," William replied with a smile. "As long as there are young people who need guidance, I'll be here. What if your health doesn't allow it? Then I'll train others to carry on the work. What matters is that the legacy continues." That night, William did something he hadn't done in years. He visited the cemetery where his family was buried. "Sarah, Emma, Ethan," he said, placing flowers on the graves, "I hope you're proud. I found a way to turn our pain into hope for others. I know I can't bring you back, but I can make sure your memories live on through the good we do for other families. Thank you for teaching me about unconditional love. It's that love I carry to every young person who crosses my path." A week later, William received a call that moved him deeply. "Professor William, it's Gabriel. Remember me?" "Of course I remember, Gabriel. How are you?" "I'm good, Professor. I wanted you to know I graduated in physical education, and I'm going to work with at-risk youth." "That's wonderful. I want to use the methods you taught me. I want to be for other young people what you were for me." "Gabriel, that's the greatest gift you could give me." "Professor, can I ask you something?" "Of course. How do you manage to believe in all of us, even when we don't believe in ourselves?" William smiled, remembering when Brandon had asked him a similar question years before. "Because I know every person carries a light inside them. Sometimes it's hidden, but it's always there. My job is just to help you find that light. Thank you, Professor, for everything." After hanging up, William sat in his favorite chair and reflected on his journey, from boxing champion to homeless, from homeless to life changer. Every step had been necessary to shape him into the person he'd become. Brandon arrived with reports from the national program. "William, this month's numbers are incredible. We now have 500,000 young people participating in programs across the country. And how many trained instructors?" 15,000, all using the methods you developed." "Brandon, Do you realize what this means? That our methodology is working on a large scale. It means we've created an army of people committed to transforming lives. Every instructor will impact hundreds of young people. Every young person will impact their family and community. It's a chain reaction of good. Exactly, and it will continue for generations. That night, William dreamed of his family. Sarah, Emma, and Ethan appeared smiling, saying they were proud of the man he'd become. "Dad, you turned your pain into love," Emma said in the dream. "And your love is changing the world," Ethan added. "Keep going," Sarah said. "There's still so much work to do." William woke up with tears in his eyes, but they were tears of gratitude and determination. 15 years after the day he challenged a homeless man to a fight, Brandon had become the national director of the sports education program. In a meeting with governors from across the country, Brandon presented the program's transformative results. "In 15 years, we've reduced youth violence by 70% in cities where the program was implemented," Brandon reported. "Over 1 million young people have participated in our projects." "And what about job placement?" asked one of the governors. 85% of youth who complete our programs find employment or enter higher education within the first 6 months. After the meeting, Brandon called William, who was traveling for an international conference. "William, the governors approved expanding the program to every municipality in the country." "That's fantastic, Brandon. How many young people will we be able to reach?" "Our projection is 5 million youth in the next 5 years. 5 million lives that could be transformed." "William, do you have any idea of the legacy you've created?" "Brandon, we made it. You've been with me since day one. You're the one who taught me everything. And you're the one who proved that the teachings work. Without you, none of this would have been possible." 2 months later, William received a special invitation. The United Nations wanted to name him a peace ambassador for global youth programs. "Professor William, your work has inspired similar programs in over 50 countries," explained the UN representative. "And now we want you to lead a global initiative." "Would that mean living in New York?" "Yes, but also traveling the world to implement your methods." William asked for time to decide. This would be the greatest responsibility of his life. "Brandon, what do you think I should do?" "I think it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to impact young people worldwide. But I don't want to abandon our work here in the United States." "You won't be abandoning it. You'll be expanding it. Imagine how many young people around the world could benefit from your methods." "And you'd take charge of everything here?" "I would. And I'm confident I could keep everything running just as you taught." William accepted the position. At his farewell gathering in the United States, thousands of former students came to honor him. Amber, now the director of a youth program in England, gave an emotional speech. "Professor William, you taught us that it doesn't matter where we come from, but where we're going, and all of us will carry your teachings wherever we go." Tyler, who had become a successful entrepreneur and philanthropist, announced the creation of a permanent fund to sustain the programs. "Professor, you invested in us when no one else believed. Now it's our turn to invest in the future." Charlie, who had earned a law degree, had established a practice dedicated to defending at-risk youth. "Professor William, you taught me that everyone deserves a second chance. Now I dedicate my career to ensuring other young people get that chance." In his new role at the UN, William implemented programs in countries devastated by war, natural disasters, and extreme poverty. In each nation, he adapted his methods to the local culture while maintaining the core principles: respect, discipline, self-worth, and responsibility. 3 years later, he was coordinating programs on every continent. Over 10 million young people had been impacted by methodologies based on his work. At a global youth conference, William was asked about the secret to his success. "There's no secret," he replied, "just unconditional love for young people and the belief that everyone can change." But how do you stay motivated after all these years? Every young person who transforms their life reminds me why it's worth it. Every smile, every achievement, every breakthrough renews my energy. Do you consider yourself fulfilled? I consider myself grateful to have found a purpose that gives meaning to my existence. At 65, William decided to write a book sharing his story and the methods he developed. The book, titled From the Ring to the Streets, A Journey of Transformation, became a global bestseller. All proceeds went toward expanding youth programs. At the book launch in the United States, Brandon organized a surprise for William. He gathered hundreds of former students from the early programs, now all successful adults. "William, we want you to know that each of us carries a piece of your teachings," Brandon said, moved. "And we'll pass those teachings on to our children and grandchildren," Amber added. "Professor," Tyler said, "you didn't just change our lives, you changed our legacy. Our children will grow up in better families because of what you taught us." William openly wept. He finally understood the true magnitude of his work's impact. "You taught me that love can overcome any tragedy," William said through his tears, "that it's possible to find purpose in pain and turn suffering into hope." That night, alone in his hotel room, William wrote a letter to his family. "Sarah, Emma, Ethan, I know you can't read this letter, but I need to write it. I've discovered that you didn't die in vain. The love you taught me has multiplied into millions of young people around the world. Every life I've helped transform carries a piece of the love you gave me. Thank you for making me the man I am today. Thank you for continuing to inspire me even after all this time. Until we meet again, I'll keep spreading the love I learned from you. With eternal longing, William." The next day, William returned to Venice Beach and walked to the place where it all began. The foundation's sign was still there, but now there was also a small monument honoring the youth transformed by the programs. Brandon found him there, admiring the monument. Thinking about what? How surprising life is, Brandon. Who would have thought a chance encounter between an arrogant personal trainer and a disillusioned former champion would change millions of lives? It wasn't chance, William. It was destiny. Maybe. Or maybe that's just how the universe works, bringing people together at the right time so they can help each other. What will you do now? I'll keep going. As long as there are young people who need guidance, I'll be there. And if one day you can't travel anymore, then I'll train others to carry on. What matters is that the work never stops." They walked to the gym where it had all started. Victoria, now a silver-haired woman, greeted them with a warm smile. "William, every time you come here, I remember the day everything changed." "It was the best day of my life, Victoria, even if I didn't know it at the time." "And the worst day of Brandon's life," Victoria teased. "Actually, it was the best day of my life too," Brandon corrected. "It was when I found my true purpose." They went up to the room where their first meeting had taken place. Now it served as a training center for instructors in the national program. "How many instructors have been trained here?" William asked. "Over 1,000, Victoria answered proudly, "and each one carries your teachings to different parts of the country." William watched a group of young instructors being trained. They all showed the same passion and dedication he had seen in Brandon years before. "Professor William," one of the instructors called, "my name is Bethany. I wanted to thank you in person." "Thank me for what?" "I was one of the first students in the program in New Orleans. I was involved with drugs with no future. The instructor who trained me had been taught by you. And now? Now I'm an educator and run a program in my hometown. I've helped over 300 young people. Bethany, you're proof that these teachings multiply endlessly. Professor, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "How do you see potential in young people that no one else does?" William smiled, remembering when he had asked his first coach the same question decades earlier. "Because I was once that lost young person. I know what it feels like to have no hope. And I know we all carry a spark of greatness, even when it's buried deep. And how do you help that spark shine? With patience, unconditional love, and an unshakable belief that the person can be better than they are today." That night, William did something he hadn't done in a long time. He trained alone on the vacant lot where he had taught Brandon years before. Every movement reminded him of his journey. From the arrogant young man he once was, to the champion who won titles, to the broken man who lost everything, to the homeless person who nearly gave up on life, and finally to the educator who found his true purpose. Brandon appeared on the field as if he knew he'd find him there. "Couldn't sleep?" Brandon asked. "I was remembering our journey." "And what's your conclusion?" "That life is worth living when you find something bigger than yourself to fight for." William, can I tell you a secret? Of course. That first day when I challenged you to fight, I was going through the worst time of my life. I'd lost my previous job for being arrogant with clients. My parents were disappointed in me and I had no real friends. You never told me that, because I was ashamed. All that arrogance was just a mask to hide my insecurity. And what changed? You showed me that real strength comes from within. That being strong means helping others become strong too. Brandon, you saved my life just as much as I saved yours. How so? You gave me a reason to live again. You showed me I could still make a difference in someone's life. They fell silent for a few minutes, absorbing the depth of their conversation. William, do you remember what you said about your family the day you told your story? I said a lot of things. You said you felt guilty for choosing boxing over being with them at Christmas. I remember. Now I realize your family didn't die because of boxing. They were the reason boxing led you to millions of other families. William was moved by Brandon's words. How so? If you hadn't been a boxer, you'd never have gone through all you did. And if you hadn't gone through all that, you'd never have developed the methods that saved so many lives. Do you think Sarah, Emma, and Ethan knew this would happen? I think true love always finds a way to multiply. The love you had for them turned into love for millions of young people. That early morning, William felt he had finally understood the true meaning of his journey. His family hadn't died in vain. His boxing career hadn't been wasted. His life on the streets hadn't just been self-punishment. It was all part of a greater path that prepared him for his true mission. At 70, William decided to cut back on international travel and focus on training a new generation of leaders to carry on the work. He founded a university specializing in education through sports, where young people from around the world came to study his methods. Brandon became the university's dean, ensuring the core principles were preserved. Brandon, I have one last request. What is it? I want you to write the next chapter of our story, so future generations understand how it all began. William, our story isn't over yet. My part is coming to an end, but the story will continue through all of you. You're not thinking of stopping, are you? I'm thinking of evolving. I want to focus on the toughest cases, the kids everyone else has given up on. Like the early days. Exactly. Going back to the roots. William created a special program for young people in extreme crisis, cases other professionals considered hopeless. In 2 years, he transformed hundreds of lives that had seemed beyond saving. How do you succeed where others fail? A reporter asked. Because I've been at rock bottom. I know what it's like to feel lost and hopeless, and I know there's always a way up, even when it seems impossible. On his 75th birthday, William was honored by former students from around the world. Thousands gathered at a stadium in Los Angeles to celebrate his legacy. The event was broadcast globally, and messages of support came from every continent. The President of the United States gave a special speech. Professor William Jackson transformed our society. Today we have a generation of young people better prepared to face life's challenges thanks to his work. Representatives from 50 countries spoke about the impact of programs based on his methods. But the most emotional moment was when the first students took the stage. Amber, Tyler, Charlie, and others, who were now leaders in their respective fields. Professor Jackson, said Amber, now a youth program coordinator at the UN, you taught us that it doesn't matter where we're born, but where we choose to go. Today we're parents raising our children with the values you taught us, added Tyler, and professionals dedicating our careers to multiplying your legacy, Charlie finished. William stepped onto the stage with difficulty, supported by Brandon. At 75, his health wasn't what it used to be, but his eyes still shone with the same determination as always. My dear children of the heart, William began his speech, today I can say my life had meaning. When I lost my biological family, I thought I'd never feel love again. But you showed me that family is a choice, not just blood. Each of you carries within you the power to change the world. Never let that light go out. And always remember, true victory isn't in defeating others, but in helping others win their own battles. The speech was interrupted several times by emotional applause. When William finished, he received a standing ovation that lasted 15 minutes. After the event, William and Brandon returned home in silence. Both were emotionally drained but deeply fulfilled. "William, do you have any idea how many lives you touched today?" "I have an idea of how many lives touched me. Every testimony was a gift." "Are you feeling all right?" "I feel complete, Brandon." Finally, complete. 6 months later, William's health began to decline. At 76, he officially retired, but continued taking on special cases of young people in his own home. Brandon fully took over coordinating the global programs, but visited William daily to discuss complex cases. "Brandon, I have a confession to make." "What?" "When you challenged me to that fight so many years ago, I could have just ignored you. I could have kept digging through the trash for food and walked away. Why didn't you?" "Because I saw in you the same lost young man I had once been, and something inside me knew I had to help." "Do you think it was intuition?" "I think it was love. The same love Sarah, Emma, and Ethan taught me. That love never died. It was just waiting for the right moment to show itself again." In his final weeks, William was visited by hundreds of former students. Everyone wanted to thank him personally for the impact he'd had on their lives. "Professor," said a young man who'd been saved from drugs years earlier, "you taught me there's always hope, even in the darkest moments. Now I'm a doctor and dedicate part of my time to working with addicts. I use your methods every day." William smiled weakly, but his eyes still lit up hearing each story of transformation. "Professor Jackson," said a former student who'd become a businesswoman, "you taught me that success without purpose is empty. Today, I use my company to fund youth programs. I remember the first time you told me I had potential," shared another former student. "No one had ever said that to me before. Now I'm a teacher, and I say it to my students every day." In one of his last lucid conversations, William called Brandon for a private talk. "Brandon, I want you to know you were the son I never had. William, you were the father I always needed. I have one last request. Anything. Keep believing in young people, even when no one else does. That's the only way to ensure our work never ends. I promise, William, as long as I live, I'll carry your teachings and train others to do the same. The legacy must continue. You can count on it. I've already trained over 1,000 people in your methods. Thank you, Brandon, for everything, for challenging me that day, for never giving up on me, for becoming the extraordinary man you are today." On a sunny Tuesday morning, William passed peacefully in his sleep. Brandon was by his side, holding his hand. William's funeral brought together over 100,000 people at the Rose Bowl. Former students came from all corners of the world to say goodbye. The casket was carried by 8 young people representing the different generations impacted by his work, from his earliest students to the most recent. During the ceremony, Brandon gave the main speech. William Jackson wasn't just an educator. He was an alchemist who turned pain into hope, failure into lessons, despair into determination. He taught us that it doesn't matter how many times we fall, but how many times we get back up, and that our true strength lies in helping others rise too. Today, William reunites with Sarah, Emma, and Ethan, but his spirit will live on in every young life we transform, every life we save, every family we rebuild. We promise to continue his work until there are no more lost youth in this world. That's how we honor his memory. After the funeral, the William Jackson Institute was inaugurated, dedicated to researching and developing new education methods through sports. The institute received funding from governments worldwide and became a global reference in the field. Brandon was named its director, a position he would hold for the next 20 years. 5 years after William's passing, Brandon organized the first William Jackson World Congress, bringing together educators from 100 countries to share experiences and develop new methods. "We're here not to celebrate the life of one man, but the legacy of a philosophy," Brandon said in his opening speech. "William taught us that every person has value, every young person has potential, and every life can be transformed. Our challenge now is to ensure these beliefs spread across the entire planet." During the Congress, impressive data was shared. Over 50 million young people had been impacted by programs based on William's methods. Youth crime had dropped by 80% in regions where the programs were implemented. 95% of program participants found jobs or continued their education. More than 10,000 instructors were now applying the methods worldwide. William was right, Amber said during one of the talks. When you invest in a young person, you're investing in future generations. My children grew up hearing stories about Professor William. Now they apply his principles in their own lives. 10 years after William's passing, Brandon decided to write a book detailing their entire journey, from their first meeting to the present day. The book, titled The Man Who Changed the World One Youth at a Time, became a global phenomenon, translated into over 50 languages. All proceeds went toward creating new programs in developing countries. In an interview about the book, Brandon was asked what the greatest lesson William had left behind. The greatest lesson is that true love multiplies. William loved unconditionally every young person who crossed his path, and that love spread like ripples in the ocean. Today we have an entire generation of adults who love and raise their children the way William loved and raised them. This has created a virtuous cycle that will continue for centuries. 15 years after William's passing, Brandon decided to retire. At 70 years old, he had dedicated half his life to perpetuating his mentor's legacy. At his farewell, he handed over the leadership of the Institute to Amber, who had become one of the world's foremost experts in education through sports. Amber, I'm entrusting you not just with a position, but with a sacred mission. What mission? To ensure William's teachings are never lost, that there will always be someone willing to believe in the potential of young people. You can count on me, Professor Brandon. I'll honor the legacy of both of you. At Amber's inauguration ceremony, over 1,000 of William's former students were present, all now successful adults in their fields. Tyler, who had become one of the country's top entrepreneurs, announced the creation of a permanent fund to ensure the continuity of the programs. This fund guarantees that Professor William's methods will continue to be applied for the next 100 years, Tyler declared. Charlie, now the Secretary of Justice, announced the implementation of William's methods across the entire U.S. prison system. We will apply the principles of transformation and second chances that Professor William taught us to rehabilitate young people in conflict with the law. Other former students announced similar initiatives in their respective fields: health, education, social services, sports. Professor William created a global network of life changers, Amber said in her inauguration speech. Our responsibility now is to ensure this network keeps growing and strengthening. 20 years after William's passing, the world had changed significantly. Youth violence had drastically decreased in every country where the programs were implemented. An entire generation of young people had grown up with the values William taught: respect, discipline, responsibility, and unconditional love. Brandon, now 75, wrote one final book, The Eternal Lessons of William Jackson. This book is my gift to future generations, Brandon said at the launch. I want children who haven't even been born yet to know the story of the man who proved one person can change the world. In the book's final chapter, Brandon wrote a letter to William. My dear mentor and friend, 20 years have passed since you left us, but your presence lives on in every young life we've transformed. Today, over 100 million people have been directly or indirectly impacted by your teachings. Youth violence is a thing of the past in most of the world. Young people have learned to channel their energy into building, not destroying. Entire families have been rebuilt on the values you taught. You were right when you said true love multiplies endlessly. The love you felt for Sarah, Emma, and Ethan became love for millions of young people worldwide. And that love will keep multiplying for generations to come. Thank you for teaching me that true strength lies in lifting others when they fall. Thank you for turning my arrogance into humility, my anger into purpose, my empty life into one filled with meaning. Until we meet again, Brandon. The end of the story. Dear listeners, what an incredible story we've just experienced together. The transformation of Brandon and William shows us it's never too late to start over. and that our greatest lessons can come from the most unexpected encounters. Share with us in the comments which moment touched you the most. Do you know any similar stories of transformation through sports? Please leave your like so more people can be inspired by this story. And most importantly, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other heartwarming stories we've prepared with so much care for you.